Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, where we do extended deep dives into some of the best art books around, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Become a part of the sessions we call the Art Book Study Group. In addition, you get access to an online archive where you can read my comic books digitally, and a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share feedbacks, tips, tricks, process, art shop talk, just generally hanging out, be in a creative space, get more of what we're doing online throughout the week. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can become a subscriber to my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a standalone psychological thriller about a man who is cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue comic book series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion to the series, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, thumbnails, work in progress, and more. And if you would like to check out the books before you buy them, there are book flip-throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channel. There's links to all these in the description of the video. So today we are doing something that I like to call fixing bad figure drawings. Figure drawing is a huge part of my learning process in terms of making comics. And I've been taking classes for many years now with an instructor named Carl Ganas. He's now teaching virtually these days on his website, figuredrawingschool.com. And I make it a regular habit to go over my drawings from class and redraw them, to study them, to look and see where I went wrong, what are the ideas that I don't understand that I thought I did, where's my anatomy off. This sort of, touching base and looking at my work from class, this has probably been the thing that has improved my actual draftsmanship more than anything else. The lessons we received during class are incredibly valuable. But going over and looking at my work and then redrawing it, analyzing it, it helps me see what it is that I'm missing. It helps me see the things that I thought I knew that I really don't, and shows me the places where I need to grow, where I need to learn, do deeper dives on my own, whether it be deeper dives into anatomy, gesture, light and tone, all these different areas that make up the fundamentals of draftsmanship. I learned quite a bit by going back over the work and just taking a look, seeing what I need to improve. So these are a sheet of some 3-minute poses. So mostly when we're doing 3-minute poses, I'm trying to work on just the gesture and getting things down into basic volumes. So these are some pretty rough sketches. And I'm working with a General's 2B charcoal pencil. So it's hand sharpened. This one is kind of mid sharpened. Normally when I have them completely sharpened, it's got a little bit more of an extended point to it, but it's not that much sharper. It's more about having a soft, rounded tip so that I can, I'm knocking over all sorts of stuff. So I can get a kind of a nice, soft, rounded, it's for getting soft tones. Anyway, let me scoot this. I'm trying to figure out a way to sit it so that you guys can see all of what I'm doing. Maybe I need to set the camera a little bit higher. That might be a good idea. So it'll be right in front of my face, but you guys will be able to see more of what I'm drawing and what I'm looking at. So you can get a sense of what it is I'm trying to correct. All right. Let's see here. So when I'm starting, one of the particular challenges with the model that we were drawing that night is that he is a male figure who he is slender. He's not a curvy male, but he has this capacity, this amazing ability to take poses that have a very fluid rhythm and flow to him. So he is a muscular male that has the elegant pose of like a female figure. And I think that there's maybe something, I don't know if it's a prejudice in my mind, like a predisposition of like, men being stocky and structural and women being fluid and elegant. But I feel like it is challenging to draw a male that has a very elegant, and that's the absolute best way to describe his poses, a very elegant gestural feel to his poses. So I'm starting with this pose right here. And one of the interesting things is watching all of the subtleties of what happens even on a two-dimensional level, because, well, not two-dimensional, but I mean on a three-dimensional level, the body is moving in different directions. Like the hip, the pelvis is pointed slightly to the left, while the rib cage is pointed slightly to the right, but also, up and to the right. So this twisting and turning that he has is very, it's what the old masters called contrapposto, the counter pose. And the model we're working from excels in taking contrapposto poses. I just realized, looking at the camera, I might as well move back in close, because I realize now, if we're wide enough for you to see everything, what I'm drawing unto itself is pretty, you can't really see the details of the marks that I'm making. So I'm going to bring this back down. I think what I'm going to do going forward in this session is I'll show you the drawing that I'm going to work from at the start, and then I'll just move in and we'll go from there, because I think it's probably better for you guys to see the actual thing that I'm working on, the actual drawing, versus just the source. An ideal world would see both, but I don't have a setup where I've got two cameras, one for the reference, one for the actual drawing. So we'll make do. We'll make do. All right. So part of this is also the fact that I'm drawing fairly lightly, because for me, this is still a block in. I try not to, and this is something that it's been an ongoing battle for me, to not go too dark with the lines too soon. But even at this stage, I'm thinking about the fact, not just is an arm going up, but is it coming forward or backward? The other arm, it's coming down, but it's going down and going first back And then at the elbow, it's now coming forward. And I think this is one of the things that early on in figure drawing was very challenging for me, was thinking not just about is something going up and down, left and right, but where is it moving in three-dimensional space? And starting to observe that the figure as a whole goes through a wide level of dynamics in terms of it. Once you look at it as moving both forward and backward in space, as well as going up, down, left, right. And hey, see my buddy Amar is in the chat. Art with Amar. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Happy Sunday. Going over some figure drawings from figure drawing class this week. I'm just analyzing. Now, the poses that we drew from the model in class were 3-minute poses. So these are pretty loose. But usually I do this anyway, because we have homework that we hand in digitally. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go back and redraw these anyway, why not get this done on a live stream and share with you guys? Now, right there, I realized I made his thighs much thicker than they should be, because I'm giving him the curves, I think, of like a female figure because of how fluid and organic his poses are. He's actually quite muscular. It's hard for you guys to imagine these things without seeing the model yourselves, but I'm going off of my memory because he's a model who I've drawn before for a number of years in classes. And to be honest, a lot of times the people that have like sort of normal day-to-day proportions and gestures are the ones that are actually pretty easy to draw. And sometimes people who are either super skinny or super muscular, that have an idealized body type, they can frequently be very difficult to draw. Let's see, Amar says he's good. It's good. Happy to hear. I'm curious with the camera that I have now. I'm not camera, with the microphone I have now, whether you actually can hear the sounds of the mark making on the page. It's almost like these can become ASMR videos. I don't have the microphone right next to the page, but it's only a little bit away from it. So but when I was setting it up, I realized the biggest problem that I had was that I had the gain turned on at all. And I had to turn it all the way down in order to get like sound that wasn't blown out. As I'm drawing, I'm having like crazy ideas because I'm thinking about the fact that the camera you're looking at is like right in front of me. So I kind of have to draw through it. And I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm wondering if it's possible to mount, because I don't have a camera that can zoom in. And I'm wondering if it's possible for you to mount a mirror like on the wall in front of me and have it angled down, and then have the camera pointed at the mirror. So it's drawing showing the reflection of the drawing. Take advantage of those old masters' techniques. Of course, mounting a mirror above my desk would also be kind of a pain in the ass. Probably need to soften up that rib cage right there, and then make it a little bit more pronounced here towards the edge, where the flesh is really going to be pressing, the bone's really going to be pressing against the skin. Not as much in here. Get the head pressing. Well, not really the head pressing, but it's more like the hand is pressing on the head because it's resting on there. A lot of times when I'm doing short pose drawings, like the 3-minute poses that I was doing in class, I get almost no facial detail at all. So I find it amazing when I see people who in 3 minutes get something that actually has like the hair, the face, hell, even a little bit of a likeness. And I'm like, God, I'm so slow. But that's because I think through every line, for better or for worse. I'm not getting super detailed with that hand because this is such a small drawing that there's not much point in me getting into those kinds of details. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, you have to let go of the perfection and be like water, my friend. Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. During class, I think that's when I am being like water because you don't really have time. You're just doing it. They're limited. They're timed poses. But in this after stage, this is almost like, I would call what I'm doing now the autopsy of a drawing. It's like, this is where drawings go to die. So let me see here. If I can get, maybe I just need to draw a little bit larger. Let's see. All right, well, that shows me. Now I know exactly. This is an interesting thing that a lot of people also don't do. This helps with proportion a lot, is if you decide how big your drawing is going to be right from the start. So if I want, it's almost like drawing a box around it, but I know that that's going to be the height of the whole figure. And I know that the pelvis is going to be halfway down. And then from there, I start blocking in my gesture. For me, that helps tremendously. And then trying to get a sense of the front and sides of the rib cage, the front and side of the pelvis, just a simple box. The arm cutting across. He had his arm practically covering his face. Forearm, upper arm coming almost parallel to the viewer. Forearm moving away around his face. Other arm kind of coming out from where the hips are. And then from here, it's just building volumes. To me, that's what the gesture is. It's kind of like a stick figure of what the body's doing. For some people, gesture is easy. For some people, gesture is elusive and they're not even sure what it's supposed to be. I mean, for me, you don't get much simpler than a stick figure. And to be honest, I think the next one I draw, I will start out with, I start out here with a box to try and help me with the width of the figure because the upper part is turned to the side. Like we're seeing the side of the rib cage here. So we're kind of seeing the serratus muscles that kind of sneak in from the side and the the lats, the latissimus dorsi. We're not really looking at the abs. We're looking at the external obliques here. But that's a tangent. What I meant to get up to specify was that in terms of really starting with just a stick figure, that is a lot of the times how my drawings start. Because if that stick figure doesn't look right, if that stick figure doesn't feel right, then your gesture's wrong. So it allows me to fix the gesture at a very, very early stage. And there are sometimes when I spend the whole pose working on the gesture because it's just something that's elusive. The model's doing something that I'm having difficulty either capturing or changing to something that feels right for me. I made that a little bit too, something I made it too thick. I just placed this line out too far. I need to change the angle of this thigh a little bit more because I'm noticing the way the pose is. The left leg is coming almost directly toward the viewer. The right leg is angled, well, I mean, it's angled back, but it's also angled to the left, and that includes the knee. And right now I drew the knee as if it's pointing straight towards us. So I need to fix that so that the leg really feels the way it's supposed to. And that's the reason why I originally had pulled this muscle down so far, is because when you twist the knee like that, the muscle is getting pulled all the way from the from where it connects up in the pelvis down. Like that muscle is getting pulled over as the knee is turning. Let's see, HJ in the chat. How you doing? Good to see you again. Says, what's up, Jeremy? Finally got a chance to catch the stream on time again. I haven't been around much because I had exams in the previous week and have some most days next week too. Art looks great. Thank you. Glad to hear it. And good luck on your exams. I am glad that I'm out of the exam taking phase of my life. For the most part, anyways. Yeah, this knee needs to be turned even more than I have it here. In fact, it needs to be turned. See, this is the subtlety. It actually needs to, if I switch from my kind of organic views to drawing stuff like boxes, it needs to be turned. It needs to be turned so that if we were looking down at a box, here's the top, here's the side, here's the front. That's what the knee is doing. Now, the interesting thing is it's joining to the pelvis, which is turned like this. So the hip bone is rotated. Looking at a box that's twisting. Like if you were to turn your foot out to the side, that's basically what's happening. It's turning out to the side and back. And drawing that here is somewhat challenging. Let's see here. He says, thank you very much. I don't think I've done too bad so far. Hopefully my next few will go all right. Hope so too. And hey, my buddy 47 is in the chat. How you doing? Hope everything went well with your travels. He says, hope things are good with you. Yes, things are good. Just chugging along, trying to get caught up on, figure drawing, my figure drawing class, getting caught up on, getting my next comic book further developed, trying to finish that cover for the revised Morningstar Volume 2. A lot of irons in the fire. So things are good, but it's just a matter of staying caught up on everything. In fact, I think this... I realized I didn't actually show you the drawing that I'm redrawing. I said I was going to do that before each one. So this is the actual drawing that I'm redrawing, which is pretty loose, rough sketch. And I'm not saying that this one is any tighter, but it's more analytical. And that's what I'm really doing, is I'm going through and I'm just analyzing the work and saying, all right, where is it working? Where is it not? Where are the things that I should understand that I don't? Yeah, it didn't seem like that difficult of a pose when I started it, but you know what? They never do. It's when you get into it and you're trying to capture all of these subtleties. That's when a pose starts testing you, pushing you, asking you, what do you really know? Let's see here. John Ersick is in the chat. Says, "Hey, Jen and I are watching as well while eating breakfast. Hi, good to see you. Hi, Jen. Hi, Jen. Hi, John. Always good to see my friends hanging out." Yeah, it's a little weird trying to flesh out the anatomy of a drawing that's a 3-minute pose, because in 3 minutes there's not a whole lot to get down, but it's also a thing where it doing a revised drawing to kind of like figure out what I do and don't know. It requires me to dig into my knowledge of anatomy and say, all right, well, the bones or the particular muscles, I didn't have time to get these in the original drawing. What goes there? Do I really understand what this should be? And if I got it wrong in the gesture drawing I did during figure drawing class, what should this be? Can I answer those questions just with the knowledge that's in my head? That's kind of the point of this exercise. It's like I said at the start of the class, this is the thing that has helped me the absolute most in becoming a better draftsman. It's not simply taking the figure drawing classes. Yes, I wouldn't even be able to do this if I weren't taking figure drawing classes, but it's the going over the drawings and analyzing the mistakes. And that can sound very downtrodden and beating up on yourself. That is not how it is meant to be, and that's not how I feel about it when I'm working on it. I almost feel like it's kind of like being an auto mechanic. You're taking a clogged and dirty carburetor, taking it apart, cleaning all the parts, and then reassembling it. That is what taking a drawing that isn't working, breaking it down, and redrawing it feels like to me. It's like cleaning a carburetor. Now, mind you, I never worked on carburetors when I took auto shop in high school. I learned how to change my own oil. I learned how to change my transmission because I accidentally put motor oil in the transmission, which shows you how much I knew about cars in high school. So I learned never to do that again. Although my instructor showed me how to change my transmission fluid, and after that, I didn't have problems. So, that went well. I didn't screw up the car royally. But the point is that it's like giving your own work, your own art, a tune-up. And tune-ups are not just you do it when things are falling apart. You know, for those of you who don't own a car yet and are going to have to own one at some point, regular maintenance is important. Changing the oil regularly, important. Rotating your tires regularly, important. Changing the spark plugs when they're due, important. If you do those things, your car will run for a long, long, long time. And if you don't take care of your car, it will not run well and you'll always have car problems. And that is sort of how I look at figure drawing. It's like the maintenance. Let's see here. Yes, Byron's in the chat. It says the difference between diagnostic and beating yourself up is one of mentality. 100% agreed. 100% agreed. Yeah, just coming at it like, hey, I'm taking care of this thing. I'm making it better. I'm improving it. Yeah, telling yourself you suck doesn't help. Telling yourself I'm getting better. I'm finding ways to draw better. That's super helpful. And what artist doesn't want to draw better? I will tell you that this feels super wonky to me in comparison to the actual. I mean, that's the interesting thing is when you take a drawing like, so I'm redrawing this pose. And when you compare the sketches, this one feels more organic and fluid. This feels stiff. It kind of feels like, well, I think that that's what this exercise is about, is trying to combat I'm trying to combine. Normally when you go from something that is fluid and organic, but not particularly anatomically detailed, to something that has more anatomical detail, but is stiff, the challenge is how do you carry this fluidness all the way through to the end of the drawing? How do you make the finished drawing feel as organically fluid as that original gesture? And I would say on this one, in trying to make things feel more solid, I lost some of that gesture. Like, for instance, this line that's in here is now broken into 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. Whereas in this original drawing, it is like pretty much one fluid line, but at most it's sort of like 1 arc and then 2 with the hip coming down. So, and that line isn't just 1 and 2, it's 1, 2, and then it carries all the way over to the elbow. So there's places in here where I lost the power of the gesture. I let this become too much of little bitty pieces as opposed to one big thing. And when I point this out, this again isn't about beating myself up. It's just me doing a diagnostic. It's me saying, okay, this drawing, this analysis of the previous drawing, the analysis failed. Why did the analysis fail? So I've joked about calling these, instead of fixing bad figure drawing, to call them figure drawing autopsies, because that's kind of what it is. It's me going through, dissecting the drawing, and just being like, all right, why did this drawing live or die? Let's see here. Byron says, I can see your figure drawing work improving massively over the last few months as well. Says used to be far more blocky. These figures are far more natural looking, in all honesty. Well, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. It's funny. I tend to draw rather blocky, just as a habit. And I think it's when I do these rough gestures and they're 3-minute poses, the original drawings. So I don't really have time to get into all of the blocks that I put in. But I appreciate that. He goes on to say, the weird dichotomy between anatomy drawing and real life anatomy is the fact that most anatomy in real life is covered by all kinds of skin, fat, flab, save the most dehydrated bodybuilders. He says, aren't nearly as cut and detailed as most anatomy drawings are. Yeah, well, what's interesting is I had a question on a pose. I'm moving on to hang on, let me try and fix this clip here. This little guy up here, whose head is kind of getting cut off at the top. Let me see if I can slide this down a tiny bit. This is the one that I'm working on now. I'm gonna redraw this guy. There was a model that we were working from in class who was particularly muscular. And I had asked about, finding the gesture, finding the story in a model who was so, whoops, that's too tall. That's crazy. I can actually look as I'm making the line. I can look on a screen to make sure I know what will and won't be on the screen. Now I know that's how tall to make this guy. My point was I was trying to capture the gesture of the figure, but it's like the level of his muscles were so uniquely powerful, like very, very bodybuilder-like. And he pointed out to me that there's always a gesture, always a story in the figure, even before you add the muscles on. And he showed me, like, I was probably over exaggerating his muscles, and he showed me, yeah, he's muscular, but he's still a strong, lean figure. And you can focus on what the bones and basic volumes are doing in that drawing, instead of getting so wrapped up in the he said you're letting the muscles dominate the figure instead of really focusing on the gesture. So yeah, that you're right that most human anatomy does not have what's in the anatomy books, or it's not visible. But I think it's more like we know that it's there under the surface, and we can kind of let it peek through in places where there's folds, where there's a particular muscle that flexes. I think it's a lot more like being a music producer, where you've got the faders and you're bringing, the bass up, lowering the treble. You're playing with the EQ, you're playing with the faders. I think that's how anatomy is. And there, every once in a while, you will have a figure in a drawing, in an illustration, that really does have all of that, all of those levels of muscular anatomical dynamics that we see in a book. And then that's when you put everything, the faders go all up. It's like being at a rock concert or an opera. What's also interesting is that my capacity to draw, what I find interesting is that it goes in concentric circles. like I'll improve a bit and it becomes visible. You can actually see like, oh, wow, his understanding, his knowledge has grown. And then I'll go through a period where I can't draw something good to save my life. And it's not that I'm in a drawing rut. It used to be that, I mean, every artist goes through a period where they can't get a good drawing out of them. But for me, it'll maybe like a couple of months at a time. And what it is as I learn, my mind and my body are relearning how to process concepts, drawing concepts, whether those be anatomical concepts, gestural concepts, volume and lighting concepts. My brain is relearning those things. And as my brain is relearning those things, it's tearing apart internally the way I currently understand the figure. And during that tearing apart, it's like, a building being torn down. The drawings really do get much wonkier the thing is, I'm not conscious that I'm doing it. It's not like I say, all right, it's time for me to tear down my drawing concepts and rebuild them again. It just starts happening. So at the beginning, I'll start noticing, it'll just be one bad drawing session and then another bad drawing session. And then it gets to the point where I'm like, what's happening? And I'm like, oh, okay, my brain has been taking in new information. It's just reprocessing. It'll reformat itself eventually. Oh, you know what? I completely missed something. I'm going to draw a little diagram on the side. I started drawing this guy, and I went into what my normal process is, which is more stick figure. It's more like a block plus stick figures. But if I was going to be drawing this guy as nothing but a stick figure, then I would have done, line 1 is just pelvis, head. Then I would have made a line for the shoulders. Usually I try to draw the legs before I draw the arms because the legs are a larger part of the body. You get the legs right, you've got half the body right. You just get one foot, the foot that's holding the weight, and then work my way back up the figure with the other foot. Then knowing that the wrist, the hand is bent, he's bending the wrist into his hip, like that. So you get that bend, and his shoulder is actually sloped quite down quite a bit, and it's more that his this bend of the wrist is pretty severe. He's really leaning on it as he's leaning back. So I might give that a little bit more of an arc. Then arm coming forward, then up. And a lot of times, if the hand is closed, I'll give it a little sphere at the end. If it's open, I'll give it like a little flipper of what direction the hand is facing. Like this. This is just a little flipper. So that's how I will draw a gesture of a stick figure. And then I will come back in here and do things like, it feels like this chest is really puffing out more, and that the abs are really pushed out. Then they're coming back in. The pelvis is coming in a little bit. And then I would start building the volumes off of this. So I think on this one, I probably started out doing kind of a similar thing, but instead of drawing just that stick for the rib cage, what I started with was sometimes I will try to do it where it's just a rectangle, kind of like drawing the flour sack if you're an animator. I'll either do a rectangle, or I'll do, if there's something where I really want to get a sense of disconnect or a shift in the body, then I will maybe do a box or sphere or an egg shape for the rib cage, and then a separate one for the pelvis. But the point is once I draw these, then I will still have stick figures coming off of that box. And I've tried to draw the head last because heads are very difficult to draw, getting a good likeness, all of that. And particularly in these rough sketches, no matter what I draw, I'm not going to be happy with it. So if I start drawing a face, I'm not going to finish the drawing. So I'm be sitting there chasing something that would be a whole drawing unto itself. Now, if I were working on like a 25-minute pose, then yeah, I would go for like the whole thing and try to get as close to a complete finished drawing as possible. But most of what I do in figure drawing classes are short poses. And maybe I need to come back to taking classes where I'm doing longer poses and really try to make finished figure drawings. Because for me, the figure drawings are just, I treat them as the tools to help me in building an illustration, whether it's a comic page or a cover or a standalone piece of artwork. I don't necessarily treat them as a finished work unto themselves. And maybe that's a challenge that I should take up more often. This thing is giving me, I need to switch pencils. It's not giving me as nice of a line as I would like, but also I'm drawing on top of, maybe I need to take this pad that's underneath off. I'm drawing on a stack of newsprint, but then on top of that, I have like a soft desk mat underneath. And it might be making the whole thing too soft. Now, I'll tell you, one of the things I'm noticing here is that I'm kind of destroying the overall form in this attempt to add anatomy onto the figure. And that is another one of those challenges, is how do you add the anatomy and have it, for lack of a better term, agree with the form. Like if you're doing a math equation, you're doing algebra, and you've got like all the numbers don't add up, they aren't quite agreeing. I know that it's very unromantic to reduce something like as beautiful and poetic as figure drawing to a mathematical equation, but I think of it in the opposite, where I'm actually looking at mathematics in a beautiful, elegant way, kind of like music. But the point being is that there's a simple fact of trying to have the drawing, quote unquote, add up, where you've got the gesture, and then the anatomy that you put on, the volumes you put on top of the gesture complement the gesture. They don't fight with it. And then the anatomy that you put on top of the volumes complement the volumes and the gesture. They don't fight with it. And for me, a lot of the time, my drawings are just fighting with each other. And that's the thing that I am genuinely trying to work on. Meanwhile, one of our cats is working on a poop in the litter box. I can hear her. And I'm not going to get super detailed with the lighting. As you can see here, it's just literally, I'm not even doing highlights and that sort of thing. It's just light area, core shadow, reflected light. That's kind of it. That's all I'm doing with this guy. The most important thing that I have to keep telling myself is not to make this harder than it needs to be. I can tell you that I'm also getting some weird distortion, not from the camera, but from my own head, because I'm not drawing this. I'm drawing it, with the table down at an angle. And normally I have it propped up towards me a little bit. But also, I am kind of trying to have to look around the camera. That's a little bit challenging. So little things like remembering that the bulges you get in muscles tend to be on the inside where the flex is. When a muscle straightens, you will get the outer muscles. They will bulge, but they don't bulge. Because the thing is, you're not just getting bulge, you're getting compression as well. So you're getting the flex of this muscle plus the compression of the tissue inside. So if you ever look like anything that bends in, that's when you're going to see the biggest bulge in the muscle. Not so much when this muscle is flexing right now to straighten my arm, it's bulging, but it's not bulging as much. And the same is true with the legs. Like you're going to see, your hamstrings bulge more than your quads. When you're bending your knee, and also with the torso, when you twist in, you're going to see that's that squash and stretch that people see, like, that you see even in here. So we're at about an hour. So I think I'm going to, you know what? Let's do one more. I still have more work to do on this guy, but let me pick one more drawing. We'll just work on it for 10 minutes or so. Let's move to the next sheet here. There's a great pose the model did, and I tried to draw it twice in the night just because it was so dynamic. This pose where he's resting on one foot, he's bent over, and then his upper body is resting his weight on his elbow, which is pressed into his knee, and which is pressed into his thigh, which is supported by the other foot pressing against the legs. There's a lot of dynamics going on in here. I found this pose very challenging, which is why I'm going to try and draw it super quick. That's a joke. It means that it's something that, if anything, I should be thoughtful about it and really ask myself everything that's going on inside of the pose instead of trying to just hack a drawing out quickly. But, maybe working on it at a faster rate will loosen me up. I'm looking to see if all my pencils are 2Bs, because some of these are a little bit darker and feel like 4B drawings. And I'm intentionally lengthening this pose out, or lengthening this torso out a bit, because the model has a long, lean body. And I can use the anatomy as a measurement, because his foot, the supporting foot, is kind of in the middle of his thigh above his knee. So I can, by placing the supporting foot right, if I know where his knee is going to be, which is halfway down his leg, I can put that foot up here and then say it's just a matter now of just drawing kind of a triangle. Well, a triangle with a blunted tip for the kneecap. But just going out and then in. Then bringing that elbow in. So I guess I probably did make his upper body perhaps a little bit too wide. Now, the challenge that I specifically remember in drawing him was that his lats are very wide, even though he is very lean. And what that means is when you're looking at him from the back, he has this very, very wide, broad shoulder on his back, even though he's very, very lean. And it's challenging to convey that body type, because his body type is part of the gesture. His body type is part of the narrative of what his body is doing. He's got his arm up here, giving him a little bit of balance against a wall. Then I need to pull this back out and then have it. That's the other thing I realized just now that I'm missing, is how it curves back in. All right, I see what is happening here. Let me try and remove this mat that's on my table. Because everything is just super soft right now. And what it's causing me to do is I can't get a nice transition from a hard line to a soft line. It's just I have to press really, really hard and get a hard line, or everything is just kind of mushy. And what I need is a line that's sort of in between those two things. So that pad that was underneath is just a little bit too soft. Good craftsman never blames his tools, but I do find that I'm not getting the type of marks that I want right now. And I'm trying to kind of problem solve on the fly. Because usually I'm able to get sort of a smooth, broad tone. And I thought removing that pad might help me get more of the line, the marks that I want, that I need for this. And I'm not really getting them. But I will have to figure that problem out on my own. That is on me. Because you got to know how to get the marks you want out of the drawing before you can make the drawing that you want. Or rather, how to get the marks you want out of the tool you're using. Otherwise, you're just sort of floundering. It's not a matter of being a master of charcoal pencil. But the marks I'm trying to get are not even masterful marks. They're just a subtle transition from hard line to soft tone. And there's something that usually I am able to get. So it's a little confusing and irritating that it's not doing what I want it to. And funny, it's almost easier to blame digital tools because when there's so many different settings that when you're working digitally and you're not getting what you want, you're like, it's just this brush set. The program isn't working. Something's wrong with my stylus. But when you're drawing traditionally and the traditional tools are not doing what you want, it's like, what? It's bad charcoal? It's a bad tree? That dog don't hunt. Yeah, these marks are scratchier than I usually am getting out of a figure drawing. And normally, I would just get like a nice subtle tone to give the sense that his shoulder blades are rounding towards the front. So they're not like completely pulled, like his arms are like way in the front or his arms are crossing over his chest, but they are pulled forward just enough to give the sense that this arm is going forward. And that again goes back to that whole equation thing, that if you draw one part of the anatomy doing one thing, and then even if it's not a detailed drawing, but you like maybe make the shoulder blades or the hip do something that doesn't agree with what the limb that's attached to it is doing. Viewers aren't going to know why. Like someone who is not an artist or an anatomical, someone who isn't necessarily knowledgeable about anatomy and drawing, they might not know what is wrong, but they'll just look at it like, huh, looks a little wonky. Don't know why. Just looks off. Because the body's doing something it shouldn't be doing. All right. All right. So it's not even close to a perfect drawing. But I feel like I've sort of bent this closer to what the model was doing. Get this foot in there. See, for me, my approach is that I try to make that basic volume have a bit of the curve of the muscles in addition to the direction of the limb, and then just try to have the muscles themselves flow farther out of that. So I have that curving shape that I was doing to make the overall leg, and then just try to have the calf sort of emerge out of that shape. And if I were drawing this in like real time with the model where I only had 3 minutes, then it would likely be something where I would just go for the silhouette of the whole shape, as opposed to trying to draw in a subtle volume, then draw anatomy on top of it. And who's to say that I shouldn't just go for that silhouette in the first place, whether it's a short pose or a long pose? Maybe I should. I mean, these studies are not for me demoing for you guys how to draw. It's me exploring. Like this is real time me trying to tear apart my drawing process and say, what can I do better? What am I doing wrong? What do I really understand? What do I know? What do I don't know? And I guess if anything, it's sharing this to encourage you, instead of just saying, oh, I wish I drew better, to actually say, well, what can I do? Are you actually looking at how you're drawing and not just cursing the things that don't work well, but are you actually analyzing your process and dismantling things? Are you getting in there and saying, oh, the reason, because generally speaking, this is about troubleshooting. And when you're troubleshooting, the troubleshooting falls into the stages of the drawings. Is your gesture bad? Are your volumes bad? Do you not know this anatomy? Are you bad at, do you not understand how light works on forms? And you can basically break something that's wrong with the drawing into any one of those categories. And more often than not, with some artists, it's one thing, and you can say, oh, this is the thing you're bad at, and you need to work on that. But I think as you get better as an artist, what happens is it tends not to be all one thing. It tends to be a little bit of anatomy in some parts of a drawing, a little bit of lighting in another part of drawing, a little bit of gesture over here, or you lost the gesture and just made it stiff. Now, this drawing, in comparison to the one that I did previously where it got super stiff, this actually does feel like I captured the gesture. Like if you compare this to the drawing that I'm redrawing, if anything, this drawing feels more like, because this is what I drew in class, 3 minutes. So not a long pose, very scratchy. But if anything, it feels like this is more of a notation of the gesture. Like I didn't even get the gesture in this drawing. It's almost like this thing kind of is a poor abstraction of the gesture. It's a poor notation of me just writing it down like in shorthand instead of saying, oh, that's a really nice gesture, even if it doesn't have anatomy. But it has enough of what the gesture is supposed to be that I can come back and draw something that does actually feel more gestural. So to me, this feels more elegant than the original gesture. And that's part of the reason for doing these. It's not always about, like, for instance, that first drawing that I did that didn't come out well, I'm actually going to redraw that again. Those first two drawings, they're worth revisiting because I want to understand why I stiffened up, where I lost the gesture. And I know I made diagrams and notes about that, but I want to come back to them. But in all of this process, this is all really not about making pretty pictures. Everything I've been doing today is about me learning. This is for me to become a better draftsman. So if you take nothing away from this, think about your work not in a critical is frequently used as a negative. Someone's critiquing you. You know, they're saying harsh things. But, you know, Byron hit it on the head. You know, analytical is a completely different thing. Diagnostic versus beating yourself up. And that's the way you want to come at your work when you're in an educational phase. This process is not the same process you use necessarily when you're making an illustration or a comic book page. When you're making a comic book page, you want to be in the flow. You want to be in the rhythm of the storytelling. You want to be in the act of making art. All of this analytical stuff done separately will make it so that when you're in the moment and you're making the art, that it will be more powerful, but it's on a subconscious level. You don't have to have it working in your head actively because you've done the analytical work separately. The two come together, they merge, like Voltron. It's Voltron of the art. All right, wipe this charcoal dust off my fingers. And on that note, guys, we're done here for today. Let's see here. All right. So, on that note, if you enjoy these live streams, if you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, we do deep dives, something we call Art Book Study Group, where we do deep dives into some of the best art books around. We've been doing a long-running series. We're working through Walt Reed's The Figure, page by page. For as little as $2 a month, you get access to that. You get access to a back archive of all the Art Book Study Group videos. Just hundreds of hours of videos of there, studying from that book, studying from Bridgman, Ken Holtgren's Art of Animal Drawing, wide variety of books. You get access to that for as little as $2 a month. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share process, work in progress, art exercises, art talk, feedback, general shop talk. It's a great place where we interact online, separate from the YouTube channel. You also get access to an online archive of my comic books, so you can read those digitally. You get all that for as little as $2 a month. There are higher tiers for higher rewards, but if you head on over to patreon.com/GERIMI, you can sign up right over there. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my most recent comic book, Morning Star. It's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. It's an 8-issue comic book series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. I basically show you how I put the entire comics together. And there are book flip-throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channel for all of these books if you want to see what's inside before you pick them up. All right, guys. Thank you again for spending time with me. I always appreciate it. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and hopefully this will inspire you to continue working on your own craft and continuing with your own creative journey. That's it for now. Go be creative.